Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our land use hearing for this afternoon. It's Monday, August 25th, 2025. I call this meeting to order, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kristen Stevens. I'm Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. With me are my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally, who is Chair Pro Tem, and Commissioner John Kofalis. Above us, from the clerk's office, we have Lindsay Jones, and to my right, we have Frank Haug from our county attorney's office. So I'm going to turn things over to Jenny Axmaker, our planning manager. She will introduce some of the planning staff that are here and give us some additional information about today's meeting.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I am Jenny Axbaker, the planning manager. Joining me at the dais here, we have Frank Haug and Christine Luckison from our county attorney's office. We have Christine Day, our geospatial services team lead. We have senior planner Michael Whitley. We have Ryan Oswendell from our planning admin support team. Across the way, we have senior planner Samantha Mott. We have planner Jared C. We have Connor Sheldon from our engineering department, as well as David Pringle. And joining us from the health department, we have Ashton Brodall and Leah Schneider. With that, I'm going to respectfully request that everyone silence their electronic devices. Please help yourself to a copy of the agenda. It can be found in the wooden frame by the door, or if you're joining us online via Zoom, you can find that agenda on our website at larimer.gov/BOCC/commissioners-meetings. For this afternoon's hearing, we will be using a public comment sign-up sheet, and we will have time limits implemented by the chair. If you didn't get a chance to sign up already, you will have a chance after those who have signed up have given their comments. Please wait to speak until you're recognized by the chair. Please maintain civility, refraining from audience applause, comments, or disruptions, whether positive or negative. Anyone who's disruptive will be asked to leave the hearing. Please make all comments to the Board of County Commissioners from the podium. We do have a portable microphone available as needed. Please state your name at the beginning of your comments and spell your name if it's unique. Please speak directly into the microphone so that remote participants may hear. The microphone on the podium can be repositioned to best capture your testimony. Questions may be asked during your testimony, but will not be answered until public comment is closed and rebuttal has begun. Upon request, we do have assisted listening devices available for the hearing impaired. For those of you on Zoom, attendees will be muted until you're recognized by the chair. If an online attendee wishes to speak or requests that a consent item be removed, please use the raise your hand function on the Zoom control bar or *9 on the phone. Thank you. Oh, also, Madam Chair, if you will allow me, I do have a recommended alteration to the agenda today. We had an agenda item that was advertised, that was on the 6:30 p.m. hearing agenda that unfortunately was also advertised as being on today's 3 p.m. agenda. So I would encourage you to make a motion to table that item from today's agenda to the agenda on September 8th. And I do have a motion available for you to do that should you like to see it.
Thank you, Planning Manager. I think that would be helpful to have that motion on the.
Give me just 1 second.
Is it better to do this before we kind of go into the rest of the agenda? Okay. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, will you make that motion, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I move that the Board of County Commissioners table the Crystal Lakes partial right-of-way vacation file number 25-LAND 4499 to the September 8th, 2025, 3 p.m. land use hearing.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner, there's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 3-0. So we will be hearing that item in September. And so now I will go through our agenda and let you know what's on both our consent agenda and our public hearing agenda. So first on the consent agenda, we have the Dowd subdivision and appeal, file number 25, land 4484. And the request here is a subdivision to divide an existing 4.07 acre lot into two single-unit residential lots located in the RR2, or Rural Residential Zoning District, and be an appeal to Article 2.3.3 of the Land Use Code for minimum lot size. And that location is near Loveland, Colorado. The second item on our consent agenda is the Pano AI. This is appealing section 9.3.7 of our land use code. Oh, sorry, Pano AI, and it's file number 25 GNRL 0571. This is an appeal to section 9.3.7 of our land use code, which allows placement of cameras or other surveillance on wireless communication facilities only for the safety and security of the wireless communication facility. If approved, the appeal would allow for the placement of cameras on an existing tower for the detection of fires and dissemination of information to emergency responders. And then the third item on our consent agenda is the Hollingsworth easement vacation, file number 25, land 4480. This is a request to vacate 5 feet of a 20-foot easement to the front of the lot, and this, which will allow a pergola and deck to be constructed on this MR zoned lot that is in the Loveland area. And so then I'll move on to what's on our public hearing discussion items. We have the Kennedy Enclosed Storage Special Review and Appeals, file number 24, zoned 3655. This is a special review for an enclosed storage facility in the AP, or the Airport Zoning District. And this request includes appeals to section 493C2 and 3, building facades, and 493E, roof form, and 493F, architectural design of the land use code. As was said, this is in the airport area. The second public hearing discussion item is the Valhalla Resort LLC condominium map, file number 25, land 4472. This is a condominium map approval to convert 22 pre-existing cabins and a recreation building clubhouse into condominiums in order to sell units individually. This is in the Estes Park area. And then the third item is the Thellman Trust Addressing Resolution Appeal. So there were 3 items on the consent agenda, and just for the public's knowledge, typically items on the consent agenda are considered routine in nature, and as far as we know, there's no perceived or significant controversy. There won't be a staff presentation, and we usually adopt those in bulk. But we do have the opportunity to remove anything from the public consent agenda and have a full hearing on that. And both the commissioners and the public have the opportunity to pull an item. So I'll ask the commissioners first, would you like any item pulled from the consent agenda? Okay, I'll put it out to the audience. Is there anyone in the audience who wanted to remove something from the consent agenda? Okay. I don't see anyone. Ryan, is there anyone online?
If a member of the public online would like to remove one of the consent agenda items, please use the raise your hand function. We have no hands raised.
Okay, then we'll consider the public, or the consent agenda before we move on to the public hearing items. Commissioner Kafalis, would you make a motion for the public, or for the consent agenda, please?
Yes, of course. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the consent agenda, subject to the conditions of approval and set out in the staff reports, and authorize the chair to sign the findings and resolutions.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 3-0. So we will move on to our public hearing items. So if you were here for the consent agenda, your item did pass, and you're welcome. Obviously, you're welcome to stay, but you may want to leave. So our first public hearing discussion item is the Kennedy Enclosed Storage Special Review and Appeals, file number 24, zone 3655. And there's a staff presentation, and I believe Michael Whitley will be offering that presentation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, we'll get started. And then as far as the applicants go, after the staff presentation, we will we can ask questions, and we'll have the applicant, if wants to present, will have 10 minutes. I don't know who the applicant is in this case. Okay, wonderful. And then we would open it to public comment. If there's public comment, we'll give you the opportunity to rebut anything you've heard, and we'll give you 5 minutes if you need to do that. And then we'll bring it back to the commissioners for any further questions, and then we'll decide on the matter. So that's how that's going to run today. And so, Michael, I'll let you get started.
Yes, good afternoon. Again, I'm Michael Whitley, Senior Planner with the Larimer County Planning Division. So this item is the Kennedy Enclosed Storage Special Review and Appeals. The request is special review approval for an enclosed storage facility in the AP Airport Zoning District. The request includes appeals to sections of the Land Use Code that deal with building facades, roof form, and architectural design. The applicant is Jacob Renninger, and the property owner is Don Kennedy of DMK Land Trust LLC. So the subject property is a 3.74 acre parcel at 4140 East County Road 30 with a Fort Collins address. That is located north of East County Road 30, approximately a third of a mile west of the intersection of County Road 30 and I-25 frontage road. So to orient you a little bit more, this property is fairly close to the Fort Collins Loveland Airport. It is not in a growth management area. It is in a region known as the, subject to a plan for the region between Fort Collins and Loveland. Directly south of County Road 30 is Loveland city limits and the Loveland Growth Management Area. So this is just on the northern boundary, just beyond the Loveland Growth Management Area. Property to the south is annexed, and a significant landmark is that this is due north of the Amazon facility. So that Amazon facility that is constructed but not yet open is just south of County Road 30. So as mentioned, the property is zoned airport, and enclosed storage facilities are allowed in the airport zoning district with special review approval. The property currently contains a building that was formerly housing a veterinary clinic that is located here, highlighted in yellow, a single-family detached dwelling located here. That dwelling was constructed in 2021, and also a 2,223 square foot barn that is existing. So there was special review approval granted for the veterinary clinic in 1979, and the property owner, the current property owner, owns a party equipment rental business, and the materials proposed to be stored consist of rental equipment and tools to maintain that equipment. The former clinic and home are proposed to be used for offices in support of the rental business. And there are 4 new storage buildings that are proposed to be constructed in 2 phases. Those are highlighted in blue. There's building A, B, C, and D. Those buildings total a cumulative of 20,256 square feet. So according to the applicant's project description, normal business hours would be Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and there would be 10 to 15 employees on site daily. Trucks and trailers used for the storage business would be kept on the property. So for this special review, there is criteria related to the special review. Then there's also general review criteria that is, most applications are subject to the general review criteria. And then we have the appeals. So there's really no concern from staff's perspective or from the public's perspective that we know of with regards to the special review itself. So I note that the special review criteria can be found on pages 182 to 184. I will not go through those. We can always circle back should commissioners have questions, but from staff's perspective, that is fairly routine. There's no concern with compliance with that criteria. The reason this is on the discussion agenda is because there are appeals to the architectural standards found in section 4.9 of the Land Use Code. So those standards only apply in growth management areas and in urban districts. AP is an urban district, and so this property is subject to those standards, whereas most of the applications that are reviewed by the Board of County Commissioners are not subject to those standards, and so the commissioners actually don't see those standards quite a lot. You know, it comes up occasionally, but it's actually fairly rare. So we wanted to put this on the discussion agenda just because, one, you don't see these standards very often, and there are deviations that we wanted to discuss with you. Staff does have a level of comfort with the proposed appeals, but we wanted to kind of put this for you for discussion should you have concerns. So with regards to the appeals, I mentioned that the architectural standards found in section 4.9 are only applicable in urban districts and in the growth management areas, but they're intended to promote high-quality building design and intended to protect and enhance the visual interest, character, and quality of non-residential and mixed-use areas, and to ensure compatibility between residential neighborhoods and adjacent commercial and mixed-use areas. So again, the buildings highlighted in yellow are existing. The proposed buildings are A, B, C, and D. And then these are superimposed on the landscape plan. So before I get into the details of the appeals, I just wanted to show you the elevations that are proposed. And again, the idea is that it provides a quality level of design that is compatible with the surrounding area. So building A is illustrated here. So it's 5,760 square feet. These are metal buildings, but they are using a variety of textures and colors to provide some interest. And so they have features such as covered entries, some openings, again, features that break up facades both horizontally and vertically. And then on the roofs, they have dormers to provide some visual interest. This is a kind of a 3D view of building A. Same thing with building B, 6,000 square feet, metal building with some architectural elements that are intended to break up the horizontal and vertical mass, dormers. This facade faces the street, and so it's got an entry feature, a covered feature over the door, and then some windows with awnings. Again, a 3D version. Building C is behind building B, oriented north-south. That's 4,896 square feet. Building D is the building along the northern property line, and that is the longest building. That's 3,600 square feet. And as you can see, the facade that faces East County Road 30 is dominated by overhead doors. So with regards to the specific standards that are being appealed, section 493C2 says that facades greater than 100 feet in length measured horizontally shall incorporate wall planes and projections or recessions that have the depth of at least 3% of the length of the facade for at least 20% of the length of the facade. So that's a lot of words to basically, the goal is to break up the facade of the building, but because we have to have some sort of measurable standard, these are the numbers we are using. Again, the intent is to break up that building, and what is being proposed is, kind of visual articulation as opposed to physical articulation. So buildings B, C, and D are longer than 100 feet, and while they do contain some recessions and projections called for, they do not contain the projections and recessions that are kind of specified in the code, but they do have that change in materials, changing colors, and some architectural elements of the roof, kind of that break up that facade. Section 493C 3 says ground floor facades that face public streets shall have arcades, display windows, entry areas, awnings, etc., along at least 60% of the horizontal length. So buildings A, B, and D do have facades that face the public street. While each of these buildings has elements like awnings, entry features, windows, etc., none of them rise to the level of 60% of the facade covered. But there are some mitigating circumstances. So for building A, there is existing and proposed landscaping that breaks up the view of the building. For building B, the facade is reduced by fencing and landscaping, and it's also set back approximately 240 feet from the front property line. And then for building D, that's again the long one that is along the northern property line, the facade is reduced by fencing and the building setback of approximately 470 feet from the front property line. With regards to roof form, again, the intent of the standard is to break up a continuous roof line so that you don't have a large-scale roof that is basically uninterrupted, and there are several standards that are intended to get at that, including overhanging eaves and slopes, and then changes in roof plane. So each building does have eaves, but they don't rise to the level that would satisfy this requirement, they have to be 3 feet past the supporting wall to qualify. The roof does have a 3.5-foot vertical rise for every 12 feet of run. That is just under, that is a little more shallow than the rise and run that would be required to comply with the code. It would need to be a 4-foot rise over a 12-foot run. So a difference, but probably not a perceptible difference for the majority of the public, kind of traveling along East County Road 30 or adjacent to the property. So it doesn't quite meet that, but then each of the buildings does have dormers on the top, and then some have some other additional features that are intended to, again, break up the building. So from staff's perspective, these buildings don't meet those, kind of exact standards, but again, it does meet the intent of the code. Lastly, there's 493F1, which says that all sides of the building shall include materials and design characteristics consistent with the front, and then use of inferior or lesser quality materials on sides and rears shall be prohibited. And the materials are used consistently across the buildings, so all sides of all buildings have the same materials. It's just that the sides and rears in general, for most of those buildings, tend to not have as many architectural features. And so had all these other elements been satisfied, we probably would have just said, okay, this is probably good. But since we have included other appeals, we decided to put this in there just in case there was any kind of question. So each of the sides of each of the buildings does have architectural features to some extent, just not necessarily the same level on all sides. Now, with appeals, there are review criteria, and those can be found on pages 187 to 189 of the staff report. And I will, kind of mention those because when approving or denying an appeal, staff, looks at these criteria when developing a recommendation with the idea that the Board of County Commissioners would use this criteria for making the decision. So the criteria are that approval of the appeals will not subvert the purpose of the standard or requirement. Approvals of the appeal will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or property values in the neighborhood. Approval of the appeals is the minimum action necessary. Approval of the appeals will not result in the increased cost of the general public. And approval of the appeals is consistent with the intent of and purpose of the code. So, as explained, from staff's perspective, this does meet that criteria, these criteria. So we do have findings. So our findings are that the Kennedy Enclosed Storage Special Review File 24 Zone 3655 complies with the special review criteria found in Section 642D of the Land Use Code and complies with the general review criteria found in Section 3D 8D, a little bit of dyslexia going on, of the Land Use Code, and that the appeals, we find that the appeals comply with the appeal review criteria found in Section 672B5 of the Land Use Code. So that is a brief presentation. Now, I should mention that this case was on the Planning Commission's July 16th agenda. So it again was on discussion. Some of the commissioners did have questions about the appropriateness of approving appeals to the architectural standards. Comments from the commissioners were generally supportive. There was no member of the public that attended the hearing either in person or virtually, so there was no public input on this. And ultimately, the Planning Commission voted on a 7-1 vote to recommend approval of both the special review and the appeals. So that does conclude my presentation. So we do have recommendations for approval or denial, recommendations for approval with a suggested motion following the recommendations.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael?
Not at this time, Madam Chair. Maybe in a minute.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Actually, I can wait. I think a question that I have is perhaps more suited for the applicant.
Okay. One of the questions that I have is that, in reading the materials and stuff, I was actually surprised to a certain extent. This feels very much like a commercial kind of business, like light industrial park type area. So I was kind of curious that there were architectural standards that were so descriptive, I guess, or detailed, given some of the neighboring kind of businesses, are there any thoughts to having more residential around this area, or just some indication of why this particular area, which doesn't feel like it would need as many architectural standards, requires so many?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this property and then surrounding areas in unincorporated Larimer County, again, south of County Road 30, is within city limits. This area is all zoned, in the vicinity of the airport is zoned AP Airport. And by default, what is allowed on a property in the airport zoning district is one single-family residential use by right. So on any land, on any parcel that's zoned AP, you can build a house by right. However, because it's the airport area, there are all sorts of commercial uses. There are dozens of non-residential uses that are listed, and virtually all of them require special review approval. So this is a unusual zoning district for Larimer County, because usually we have something that's strictly residential or strictly commercial, but this is kind of a hybrid where actually most of the developed parcels in the airport zoning district are developed with single-family uses and then associated agricultural uses. But there are scattered businesses, including enclosed storage. I've got another special review that is under review that you ultimately will be reviewing at some point for another enclosed storage facility in this region. So if someone wanted to build a single-family home, they certainly can. And the property immediately to the west is a single-family home with an agricultural outbuilding. So, yeah, residential is very common in this area.
Just out of curiosity, it's like, how big is this? How many square acre, or how many acres is this? I mean, it sounds like the airport area encompasses a lot of land.
Yeah, and actually, I do not have a map at my fingertips, but I can certainly pull up one, maybe during the applicant's presentation.
Sure. Yeah, please go ahead.
Just because I can piggyback off on this, there is a fairly large housing development just to the west of that
Eagle
are
Ranch
higher end
Estates,
homes.
yes.
And I have talked to those, and we actually, that has a public improvement district on it. I don't know if you could bring up that map, but there is a very active HOA and PID right to the west of that. And so, yeah, that whole, Madam Chair, if you look up that whole little area there. And
Yes.
so there's a lot of homes there. Just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yes, this neighborhood is, I believe, Eagle Ranch Estates, which is all residential.
Is within that zoning area?
It is also
Yeah,
zoned
okay.
AP.
Zoned AP, okay. No, just kind of curious around why there would be those standards, but I guess if there are single-family homes in those areas, that makes sense that there would be some architectural standards, and its visibility from the roads and some of that, so that's helpful.
Yeah, and actually, to get to that second point, which I didn't directly address, so these standards are applicable by default because it's in the airport zoning district. Now, if this was single-family development, there would be no architectural standards that would apply. This applies to non-residential uses only. And Jenny Axmaker is showing the airport zoning district. So, and I'm using my mouse hoping to, here, let's see. Oh, the mouse is not showing up. But, oh, no, there we are. I'm just moving too fast. Okay, so everything in the teal is the airport zoning district. Eagle Ranch Estates is located here. This property is located right about here. And then Mountain Range Shadows, which is also another large residential development, is also zoned AP. So really, this is an overlay that is only found in this zoning district because of the proximity to the airport, where residential may be appropriate, but also because of the proximity to the airport, non-residential uses may be appropriate on a case-by-case basis.
Interesting. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for explaining all that. I don't have any other questions. Any other questions before we move to the applicant?
Yes,
Commissioner Cavallis?
Michael, well, as you were looking at the zoning area, the airport zoning district, where is the Northern Colorado Humane Society facility? Aren't they off of County Road 30?
They are, and they are
West.
also in this vicinity. Oh, and actually, is the Humane Society in City of Loveland limits? I believe it might be. Jenny's pulling that map back up. And actually, the Humane Society is on the south side of the road. There are some pockets, so the yellow, south of County Road 30 is city limits, and so I am thinking that if the Humane Society is in the county, it's zoned AP. But I think it might be in Loveland city limits. Not 100% sure on that, but it is in this stretch between this property and County Road 9.
Thank you, Michael. Just wanted to get a little bit more perspective.
Certainly. You're welcome.
Okay, anything else before we go to the applicant? All right, so I'll ask the applicant to come up. Are you Jacob Benninger? Okay. Well, welcome, Jacob. You'll have 10 minutes. I mean, you don't have to take all of the time if you don't need it, but we'll give you 10 minutes to present. Thank you.
Okay.
And we'll have you introduce yourself, too.
Okay. My name is Jacob Renninger, Shamrock Buildings, the applicant. I want to apologize first. I don't have much of a presentation here. This is a first for me, this whole process, special review. I think Mr. Whitley touched on everything that, all the points that we really needed to make. We have some storage buildings we're trying to get approved, and amongst Amazon building, and the neighbors have a metal building that doesn't look nearly as nice as the one we're proposing. So pretty simple concept, really.
Great. Anything else you wanted to say? All right, so we'll, thank you. Any questions for Jacob while he's up here? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jacob. And first of all, since you're a bit on the tall side, if you could try to talk more into the mic so I can, I have my hearing aids on, but
Okay.
still help. That helps a lot. I appreciate that. I wonder if you could comment in response to some of the referring agency comments. For example, I think the city of Fort Collins, one of their comments had to do with a natural area that is, I think, to the north, and they were asking that there be some type of landscaping. Can you speak to that, for example?
I can, but would it be okay if I called the property owner up here?
Sure.
He's been working with
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy. He's been working with the civil engineers.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Don Kennedy. I am the owner of the property, trying to develop. I'm not a developer. I'm just a party guy who wanted to be part of adding some storage space to my building, or to the property to store our equipment. I think your question was pertaining to the neighbors to the exact east, and they're also to the north of us.
Me in particular, I mean, there were various referring agency comments, which is typical of land use hearing discussion items, and one of them in particular, there were a number of things from the city of Fort Collins, and they were talking about that there's the Soaring Vista natural area that is somewhere in proximity. I thought it was to the north, and they were recommending or suggesting or asking that there be some additional landscaping to try to create that buffer in terms of view shed and all of that.
Yes, and if you look on the drawings, this is like Michael had said. This is superimposed over the landscape design too. There's numerous trees, and bushes and stuff which are underneath a fully blacked out 6 foot tall fence. So there's a 6 foot fence that has been blacked out, and then there's going to be landscaping that is progressively going to, obviously grow, but there's an enormous amount of trees. I mean, I've been working on this landscape now for the last week, but every circle, every hexagon, every single thing that you see along the perimeter of the property, even in front of some of the buildings, like Building A, there's additional trees there. There are some trees already on the property. I personally am trying my hardest to make this property beautiful. It's very important to me. I take pride in this property, but also with the landscape design, the intentions are to put as many trees and as many items as we can put to make it look natural. As natural as it can be. And as far as that goes, I know that that was designed and kind of approved through the requests of whatever committee, and then I think we've been accepted with the design that we've come up with. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, there are some other things that the environmental planner is suggesting. I guess there's a detention pond that's close to the natural area, and I think it's great what you just described. It appears that they're wanting to make sure that there's the proper seed mix wherever you need to be doing that, as well as where space allows, planting things that could be considered understory, from where the trees are. But
Yes.
it sounds like you're doing your best to take all that into consideration.
Yeah, and I've been really reviewing the landscape because I'm reviewing it from the budget perspective too. There's a lot of trees, there's a lot of pine trees, there's a lot of low vegetation, there's a seed mix, which I've learned about seed. There's the seed mix that's going in the detention pond area. There's berms that we're going to put around the area, as well as concrete pans to retain water, so that we get no leakage into the open space. Not a drop is leaving this property. There's a lot of things that went into making sure that this worked, and that it also looks good too.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
I can stay up if you have any
Thank you,
questions.
Commissioner. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, any questions for the applicant or the owner?
Thank you. Thanks for being here today. I was trying to review all of the outdoor lighting that you have because there'll be new buildings. Are those all, because we have new outdoor lighting standards. Are those, I don't know if this is staff or for the owner or applicant, how, are those all downward facing and following the new code and understanding about night sky and wildlife migration and things like that?
The photometric plan does include downcast freestanding light fixtures, yes, and also wall packs. So all lighting will be downcast, and they did submit a photometric plan, which is not in your packet, but it does comply with the current lighting standards.
Yeah, I think I'd read that it was suggested following the code, but it was just like one sentence. So I wanted to make sure that they understood the requirements there. So, okay, that's all I had for now. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions, so we'll have you sit down and we'll see if there's anybody in the public who wanted to speak, and then might call you up if there additional questions come up.
Okay.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So is there anyone in the public who wanted to speak? Anybody in the audience who wanted to speak on this issue? In this case, is there, Ryan, can you check if there's anyone online who wanted to speak in the public?
If any member of the public online would like to speak on this case, please use the raise your hand function now. We have no hands raised.
Okay, bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, any questions for either staff or the applicant or owner before we deliberate? No? Commissioner Shattuck McNally?
No, I think my questions have been answered for now.
Okay. Well, Commissioner Cavalos, we'll start with you then for deliberation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and appreciate the applicants here and the conversation. I think you're making a good faith effort to create a space for your business that you currently have in such a way that's compatible with that area, that zoning, certainly the natural areas, certainly recognition of the importance of night sky and those kinds of things. Based on staff recommendation, it is clear that the various, there are I think 3 sets of review criteria that have been met, and we have to base our decisions as much as possible on objective framework, which is the review criteria, the special review criteria, the general review criteria, and I think the criteria related to appealing. So that has all been done. So good for you folks, and therefore I can support the 2 motions before us.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I really appreciate both applicant and owner being here today to answer questions. I am aware of this area. I know it really kind of well because I've been out there a few times for the Humane Society, and and some of the other tours we have, and with Amazon and the building, been inside there a couple times, and I know that neighborhood, so I appreciate the attention to breaking that up and making it look a little more like almost like farm-like with the other building close by, and I appreciate the seed mix and paying attention to that, especially with pollinators. Just to kind of remind everyone, just to the south is the High Plains Environmental Center with a large lake, and it's near the airport, and it has lots of native plants, and it is that neighborhood and area is one of the most pollinator diverse areas in the region. And there's a lot of things happening there, and there's also migration, and that's why it's not just that it's kind of in conjunction, it's in the same kind of pathway. So that's why some of these things are really important. So I wanted to call out, and I think it's within a mile, maybe 2 miles of that location. So and they've done a lot of work there to make that biodiversity. And if you haven't been out there, I recommend checking out the little library in the area and learning, because it's very interesting urban habitat work that they do. But that's why I'm really glad to see that they the seed mixes were helping with pollination efforts, and also the night sky. And I think kind of working with the Fort Collins to kind of follow some of their suggestions or ideas for trees and shrubs. And I see that is added to assist with the habitat value, because it is near a very biodiverse area that has been intentionally developed and grown into that way. Also, I appreciate trying to think about colors and lighting, and just kind of trying to, as you said, trying to make it, take pride in the property and make it kind of not just look commercial, but kind of blend in, because it is a mixed use neighborhood. And I just think I agree with staff that this still stands with the intent of the code, and so the appeals. So I can feel like that has met those criteria, and that was one thing I had been concerned about in the beginning until I read through the rest of the packet. So I think I can support both motions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here. I'll be supporting as well. I feel like you meet the criteria. Appreciate the extra effort that you've gone to actually make the buildings, closer to what our architectural standards are. Noting that there is a big giant Amazon warehouse out there that probably would not meet some architectural standards. But nevertheless, this is very, like I said, it's, as was explained, it's a very commercial. It's commercial and residential. It's very mixed, and so I think it's important to have the elements that you added. So appreciate that, and then the attention to detail around some of the requests from City of Fort Collins around the adjacent natural area. With the shrubbery, and learned more about seeds than you maybe ever wanted to know. But I think that attention to detail is really important. And so I do think you meet the criteria, and that you've worked hard to do so, and I appreciate that. And so I will be supporting these motions. So Commissioner Shattuck McNally, I'll ask you to make the motions.
Certainly. I'll read these separately, but read them together, and we approve both of them. County Assistant County Attorney, or do you want us to do them separately?
You can, if you would do them both separately. That'd work.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, I'll read the first one, and then I'll read the second one. Would that be okay?
Sounds fine.
So for motion A, I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Kennedy Enclosed Storage Special Review, file number 24-ZONE 3655, subject to the conditions as outlined above and in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 3-0.
Madam Chair, I'd like to now move on to motion B. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the appeals to sections 4.9.3.C.2 and 3 building facades, 4.9.3.E roof form, and 4.9.3.f, architectural design of the land use code.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Thanks for being here. So we'll move on to item number 2 on our discussion items, and that is for the Valhalla Resort LLC condominiums to convert cabins to condominiums. And who is Michael? Is it Michael Whitley again? All
It
right.
is. Again, for the record, I'm Michael Whitley, Larimer County Planning Division Senior Planner. So this item is the Valhalla Resort LLC condominium map, and the request is condominium map approval to convert 22 pre-existing cabins and a recreation building, also a clubhouse, same thing, same building, into condominiums in order to sell the units individually. The applicant is Trish O'Flaherty, and the property owner is Danette Barrett. So the subject property is a 9.24 acre parcel located at 2185 Eagle Cliff Road, Estes Park. It is approximately 1,300 feet west of the intersection of Eagle Cliff Road and Highway 66, also known as Tunnel Road. The parcel lies both north and south of Eagle Cliff Road. Let's see, and is within the Estes Valley planning area. The property is owned EVA1, Estes Valley Accommodations Low Intensity. So for reference here, Eagle Cliff Road is a private road that runs through this area. The main portion of Eagle Cliff Road runs east-west and bisects the property. There are also segments of road, and these are all private roads, that run both north and south of this property, including this segment here and this segment here, that are also named Eagle Cliff Road. So there are some recommendations with regards to addressing that would occur, kind of at a future date. But Eagle Cliff Road does refer to several different segments of road. So the property is currently operated as the Valhalla Resort. It consists again of 22 rental cabins and a recreation building. The applicant is requesting approval of a condominium map that would allow each cabin to be sold individually. And then the existing recreation building is included in the map and is intended to be converted to a single unit detached dwelling. Should the condominium map be approved, then it could be individually sold and then converted to that dwelling. So under the current proposal, the Valhalla Resort would continue to operate as a non-conforming resort lodge cottage business. And then as each individual cabin sold, they would no longer be part of the resort operation and would instead be classified or reclassified as single unit dwellings. If a new property owner, who purchased a condominium unit, wishes to rent the cabin on a short-term basis, they would be required to obtain short-term rental approval through the site plan review process, and each application would be subject to current short-term rental standards. So that includes a limitation of one short-term rental per property. So the first one would be able to make an application for a short-term rental and be compliant with that standard. Any future applications would have to appeal that standard. And then the other major short-term rental standard that is relatively new to the code would be compliance with Appendix G standards with the rural area road standards. So as it exists, the property is considered to be non-conforming, and as units are sold as individual dwellings, they would continue to be compliant with standards. It is when short-term rentals are proposed on the newly sold lots where new standards would come into play, including, again, compliance with the road standards. So that would only come into consideration with future applications. So the condominium map assigns unit numbers to each dwelling and identifies limited common elements surrounding each unit. The dwellings would be individually owned at both limited common elements surrounding the units and general common elements kind of in between the units would be collectively owned and maintained by an association. Other than allowing for the conversion of the recreational building to a single-unit dwelling, approval of the condominium map would not result in any additional development or physical changes to the property. So, as I mentioned, Eagle Cliff Road is a private road, and there is no formal road maintenance agreement among property owners that rely on that road for access. And again, to go back to this other map, several of these roads in here are named Eagle Cliff Road. So it's kind of a network that extends beyond this property. And there is generally a recognized issue with road maintenance in this area. But the condominium map itself would not be a trigger for the requirement of a road association. So one of the emails that's found in your packet does mention a concern about road maintenance and the desire for the establishment of a road association. You also received an addendum earlier today that included an additional email that mentions, kind of concerns about road maintenance and a concern that the conversion of this to a condominium would make the situation worse. So we have looked at this extensively internally, including with the engineering department and with county attorney staff, and have come to the conclusion, based on our codes and our standards that we do have to, kind of abide by, the condominium map itself is not a trigger for either the requirement for a road maintenance association, which again would include more than just this property, but all the adjacent properties that rely on Eagle Cliff Road, the various segments for access, and it also does not trigger compliance with current road standards. However, any future application for a short-term rental would kick in compliance with the current road standards and would have to be considered at that time. So, as with the previous application, there are criteria for a condominium map, and there are only 4 of them. And these, again, are directly from the land use code. So, first, the proposed use of the condominium units are consistent with the existing zoning on the site. Again, this property is zoned EVA1, which is an accommodation zoning district in the Estes Valley. The current use and proposed use as it transitions to single family is allowable, so these are allowed uses by the zoning. Next, the site complies with section 4.7 landscaping, 4.6 off-street parking and loading, and Article 8 signs, and the current site does comply with those standards. Next, the condominium map complies with the monumentation and plat preparation standards required by state statute. There is a condition of approval that just basically requires cleanup of the plat to comply with some comments from our surveyor. There's nothing significant, it's just kind of details with regards to, adjusting some numbers and providing additional information on that condominium map. And lastly, this is again directly from the code. A criteria is the applicant has submitted property owners association documents or their equivalent that address the owner's rights and responsibilities with respect to parking, loading and access facilities, landscaping, utilities, and any other common elements and facilities on the site. The documents must also provide for perpetual maintenance of common facilities by property owners. If property owners fail to adequately maintain the common facilities, the county commissioners may take over maintenance and charge the cost to the property owners until property owners demonstrate they can adequately maintain the property. So, the Development Services team does find that the the condominium map complies with the applicable review criteria. And we do have a set of 3 conditions. Now, the original staff report contained 4 conditions. One of those conditions was that reference to future development on the property be removed in the condominium declaration. The applicant did provide, after the staff report was written, a revised condominium declaration that was included in your addendum packet. So that condition has been removed. So we do recommend approval subject to 3 conditions, including making technical corrections from the land surveyor in the engineering department. And then 2 are standard conditions. The establishment of the condominium units and definition of limited common elements shall be finalized at such time when the condominium map and findings and resolution of the county commissioners are recorded. And Larimer County may follow standard code compliance procedures to correct land use code or other violations, but Larimer County is under no obligation to assume any maintenance or other management responsibilities. So that's a brief overview of my staff report, and I do have a suggested motion when we get to that point.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions? Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions. If I might ask them, I'll get through them. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Whitley, can you go back to that, expand and clarify the fourth condition that was removed? It's because of the addendum that we received.
Yes.
Can you just kind of walk through that and expand on that a little bit, please?
Sure. So this actually has gone through several iterations. So there are, as I said, 22 current units on the property. In this particular zoning district, EVA1, that is an accommodation zoning district, and that does allow for one unit, the equivalent of one unit per, I think it's 10,000 some odd square feet. It's in the staff report, but the zoning would actually allow for additional residential density on this property as single-family dwellings. And so the initial thought was that after approval of the condominium map, the applicant desired to have the ability to come back and add up to 11 dwelling units to this property, which from a density standpoint would be allowed from a density standpoint, but it creates complications if you do a condominium map and then within the common elements try and create additional units that would be condominiumized and sold. One of our requirements for a condominium map is that you can only do a condominium map on an existing building. So you can't create additional lots that would accommodate additional development. So either the applicant would have to develop the additional 11 units and then go through a condominium process after the units were built, or they would have to remove that proposal because it's really not feasible to do that after approval of the condominium map. The original condominium declarations that were included in your packet did make reference to the ability to develop additional units. That has been removed, and so that condition was the condominium declaration shall be amended to remove reference to that additional development potential. That has been satisfied with the condominium declaration that was provided in your addendum this morning.
Okay, thank you. Thanks just want to make sure I had a clear understanding of that. My next question, I'm going to start on page 310 of the staff packet, where it says that Valhalla no longer seeks short-term rental approvals on all the units. Was that can you explain that and expand? Was that original intent to get short-term rental things on all the units?
Correct. As I mentioned, this has gone through a few iterations, and the initial request was both a condominium map and approval for short-term rentals, the ability to utilize each unit as a short-term rental independently. Because those are different processes and because of the complications I mentioned with short-term rentals having to comply with current standards, including the road standards, this has been modified over time to not require or not request approval of short-term rental ability for these units as individually owned units, and it removed the request for the ability to develop additional units.
Okay, so my next question is, the road, we have an issue up in that valley that I've been going up every year of my life where roads are very similar. So if all these homes, my question is, if all these homes are on Eagle Way and there's different access points, they'll all each get their own address or B number, or what does that look like? And will we have any confusion or any thoughts on road names and things? So I'm wondering what that looks like.
Yeah, so there were comments from the addressing folks who requested that these be renumbered and possibly the roads renamed. So we are not currently renaming roads in the Estes Valley. And actually Christine Day is one of the addressing folks, and so she can expand on that if she cares to. But I think the idea is that individual addresses can be assigned when units are sold and converted from that resort lodge operation to a single dwelling unit. So it actually would require a change of occupancy permit to reclassify that. It's a fairly simple permit. But as permitting occurs with the sale and conversion of homes from, again, short-term rental to long-term occupancy, we have the opportunity to assess the addressing.
Okay, so the next question is, the road standards, these roads are probably needs a lot of work to meet the road standards both ways. And so right now there's no probably money collected or a road association. So is the thought that it'll just be that way and they're going to try to appeal all those road standards, or what does that look like?
Well, so that would come up when we receive the first short-term rental application. And so because, these condominium units don't even exist yet and we don't know the intent of any individual owner, we can't really know what the intent is, but there would be two options. So if someone buys a unit and decides they want to pursue short-term rental approval, they would either have to improve the road, the segment of road that provides access to this all the way to Highway 66, which is the nearest county road that complies, or they would have to appeal the standard. And of course, as commissioners, you would have the ability to review any individual application and appeal request and evaluate that based on the, justification for the appeal, when and if an appeal is received. But we don't know, the intent of any individual property owner, but those would be the options: comply or appeal.
And this would potentially be 22 of those.
Potentially.
Potentially. And I'm very aware of this property and where it's at because I hike up around there a lot. Have we spoken with the applicants about making sure people understand about the short-term rental requirements before?
We have, and
Okay.
the applicant and property owner are both here, and so they can, address those, that situation, yeah.
Okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gonzalez, any questions? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Just to follow up on a couple of the questions, comments that the Commissioner Shattuck McNally made, I'm wondering, first of all, if the intent is that individuals buying the cottages, which are part of this lodging facility, the cabins, they would have the option to convert them to short-term rentals, and they would have to go through the process. Question I have is, and I think you got to it because I was curious what kind of notification, would potential buyers be made aware of that there is quite a vigorous process to become a short-term rental. So that, I think that's been addressed. And then related to that, Michael, and that is, I'm sure there's an answer to this, but we have, maybe it doesn't apply in the EVA1, but we do have the accommodation zoning district, but we do have setback requirements. How could you have 22 short-term rentals that are so packed together?
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty sure that the separation requirement is not applicable in the EVA1 zoning district.
That's the answer, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Then, if I may continue, the separation requirement, thank you. So, in reading the material, so the Valhalla Resort folks would continue to operate as a non-conforming resort lodge cottage business, and as cabins are sold, they would become part of this association. But when does the updated condominium declaration to form this road association, et cetera, when does that take effect? Because I thought you form an HOA or a road association when they're actual property owners, and how does that work?
Yeah, so it is currently under one ownership, Valhalla Resorts LLC. And so the association is created when the declaration is filed. And what happens, should this application be approved, Larimer County would record 3 documents. We'd record the condominium map, we'd record the condominium declaration, and then we record the findings resolution from this hearing. And so those are the 3 documents that would need to be recorded from the county's perspective. There may be additional documents that the applicant would care to record. You did mention a road maintenance agreement. There would not be a specific road maintenance agreement recorded with this. Now, to clarify, so the road maintenance agreement would be for off-site improvements or maintenance. So as I mentioned, Eagle Cliff Road goes quite extensively through this area, and there are kind of offshoots beyond the main east-south. The property owner, as an owner of the property, is obligated to maintain the portion of the road on their property, but not to improve it to current standards. And so that is the situation throughout this area. Again, this application does not trigger the requirement for a road maintenance agreement, which would pull in other property owners to an agreement with regards to comprehensive maintenance, but it would continue with the current situation, which is a patchwork of individual responsibility, which is not ideal, but that is the situation we have now.
Thank you. One last question, please. And that is, you referred to this property as a non-conforming property, and reviewing the material, especially from our code compliance folks, there's quite an array of additions that did not follow the building permit process. And so I think the way we resolve that is the as-built permit process. Can you speak to that so folks can understand that?
Correct, yes. And actually, code compliance staff and I went out and spent several hours on this property walking every single cabin with the property owners, and we have identified all of the outstanding issues. So it's mostly related to decks and that sort of thing, but there have been various improvements made over time to these cabins without benefit of a building permit. And so code compliance staff is actively working with the property owners to resolve those issues. That is handled separately from this application. So the improvements, such as the decks that actually extend, kind of extend the unit itself, are accommodated with the condominium map and the declaration, kind of documents. So they're contemplated. But they do require permits, and there are quite a few outstanding permits that are necessary. But the property owners have been very cooperative with working with our code compliance staff on resolving all those issues.
And indeed, it's as you described. Thank you. I think one of the buildings on this property is the recreation building, and I believe it was converted to a dwelling unit. Will that be more involved to try to get that up to code?
Yes, that would be. So it is currently a building that exists as a recreation building. There would be a permit required to convert it to a single unit dwelling. There would be different building codes that would be applicable. That can all be handled, though, through the building permit process. There's no separate zoning approval. It would just be a building permit demonstrating compliance with current International Residential Code standards.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
All right, any other questions before we move to the?
I'll wait till after the applicant. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, I'll ask the applicant to come up. And it looks like the applicant is Trish O'Flaherty. Is that?
So my name is Matt Athey. My paralegal is
Can you
Trish
repeat your?
O'Flaherty. It's Matt Athey.
Matt Athey.
My paralegal is Trish O'Flaherty, but I can assure you she wants nothing to do with this hearing right now. And so I think the key for us is that it's been a living project for us. We really came with an idea of, like, what can we do? We contacted Larimer County, got in touch with Michael. Mr. Whitley's kind of helped us figure out whether what we have is feasible or not feasible, and what you have today is kind of the result of that. So we're not super strong on, one idea must go and we're going to fight with everybody. The plan is to really work with everyone to make sure that we're compliant with the wishes of you all here today. Essentially, one thing that I think is important with regard to the road is that right now Valhalla is the one who is doing the road. That would be a common element. That would be an HOA thing. And then after, the way that it works is, I believe 60 days after 75% of units have been sold, that's when the owners take control of the condo association. And so that would be a living process for anyone who wanted to buy in. The other thing that I think is important is that we have the gauge from the community, we think, is that there's a lot of short-term rentals, and everybody wants to do short-term rentals, especially in this area because it's so beautiful. However, that's not the goal of us and the vision of us for the project, right? The Estes Park needs more residences for people who are living and working in Estes Park. And this is another way to provide that while getting what my clients want, which is to get a condominium association going and pass it on to the owners once that metric is made. And this is Danette. She is going to talk to you about that stuff, and I'll talk to you about stuff that gets a little hairy for her.
Hi, my name is Danette Barrett. I am the property owner. I represent Valhalla Resort LLC. And I want to thank the county commissioners for reviewing our application. We purchased this property almost 5 years ago. And after purchasing the property, we've seen that there are quite a few things that have happened over the years. It's been a resort for a really long time. And have been owners before us who did improvements without going through the proper channels. And we've learned that as we've gone through this process. And so our goal is to provide more housing stock for the Estes Valley area and not necessarily more short-term rentals. There's a lot of great units within this complex that would make amazing homes for families to live in the area. So that is our goal. That's what we will be. I am also a broker. That's what I will be advertising at these homes as is family dwellings for their families to purchase and to live in, not necessarily for short-term rentals.
Did you guys have anything else? Because you do have 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes.
No, I think we're happy to take questions.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we can end your portion. And are there questions for the owner applicant? Commissioner Shattuck McNally?
Thank you for being here, and always been coming up there everywhere in my life. I know very much how it's important to have some increased housing for folks in that community, but also we hear that a lot, and then folks are just looking to sell because they maybe advertise they could turn them into short-term rentals, which brings in folks from outside. So how when you're looking at fixing some of these code compliances and looking at advertising this, and looking at kind of the road things, I know there's some folks that do live there from like the park and some of that area, because I know the Conservancy and stuff has purchased some of those and turned them into workforce housing. Are you looking to work with the city or the school district or the hospital? And what are your thoughts on that? Because sometimes I get skeptical when people come up in land use hearings and say, "Oh, we're going to do this," but really it ends up being something different. But
yes, so I've reached out to the Estes Park Housing Authority to try to work with them to be able to create a program with them or work with them. I haven't gotten any responses from them, but I have tried to reach out to them to work through them. We will advertise them as family housing. We currently have one cabin that sits on its own lot, and we have it advertised as a family dwelling. And in there, I specifically say it does not come with a short-term rental permit. And if somebody wants it as a short-term rental, they have to contact Larimer County. I always send them to Larimer County and make sure that they understand the road issues and everything that would take for them to do that. The few people that I have had interested in that one have been families looking to purchase in the area.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for right now, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Gafala, some questions?
Yes, I have one question. Thank you, Danette. And what was your name?
Matt.
Matt. Thank you. You, as a real estate broker, and having had experience in what you just shared with the one particular cabin that is on its own lot, you seem to be very confident, should this move forward, that you'll be successful in selling all of the cabins and getting through all of the need to address any kind of code compliance issues. How come you're so confident you're gonna be able to sell all those cabins?
Because I do believe there's a need for the housing in the Estes Park area. I do think that they will sell because of that. They do need, we've worked really with the county to find out what each one of these cabins needs in order to bring it up to its permitting needs. So all of those things will need to be done, and I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to put forth the effort and the money to be able to get them there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any questions at this time, but if we do, we'll call you back up. But thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we'll open it up to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wanted to give public comment on this item? Okay. Ryan, will you ask if there's anybody online? Thank you.
If there are any members of the public online who would like to speak on this item, please use the raise your hand function now. We have no hands raised.
Last opportunity for in the room. Nope, no hands raised. All right, we'll close public comment. I'll bring it back to the commissioners. Any questions from the commissioners before we begin deliberation? Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Our county attorneys, I have questions for you, or maybe this Mr. Whitley. This is unique, and what I see is maybe lots of complications for the county going forward with road naming or 22 appeals for road standards and short-term rental applications, and it's like first in, I just see complications. So I know we can't say that's going to happen, but I see complications. So staff obviously feel positive about this. I see issues. I see more hearings coming up. So can you, what does that look like? We get first in, and then we have, one person is not going to want to fix all those roads, so they're going to get an appeal. So then does that set the precedent that all of them don't have to set the road standards? So I'm just curious. I mean, I don't know what that looks like, and I know we can't comment on future things, but I hope you understand where my question's coming from, and how can you carefully answer that for me?
Well, I'm trying to make sure I understand your question. The application today is for a condominium map. And so the condominium map process has to come to the county so that the county can review it and make sure they're sort of in line with our standards. There's a whole separate state statutory regulatory structure for condominium maps. But what it does is it makes these individual buildings, even though they're all on the same parcel of land, separate and sellable. That's the decision that's sort of before the board today, and those are the criteria that you have to look at. It may be that in the future, people come in and want to change the use or do something different, and they're going to have to go through a separate process to do that, at which time you'll have to apply those criteria. And it could be messy. I mean, that's part of what's difficult is there are 22 different lots, and there are a lot of different potential outcomes for those 22 different lots. But you got to find a way, or you need to review the criteria for the condominium map and decide whether there's a way to fit those other concerns into those criteria for this condominium map, if that's your concern. We have a lot of situations where there's potential for future development, but it's hard to speculate. And I think that's sort of what Michael was saying, although I don't want to speak for him. It's hard to speculate about what people may or may not do. But what is necessary, or some ways that you could maybe modify or protect it, is to make sure that there's public notice of any requirements that need to be fulfilled in the future, so that there's no question or people coming in and saying, oh, I didn't know I had to do that.
Yeah, that was, Madam Chair, if I might continue, that was my concern, because we've seen that before. So that's something we could do, is put conditions of approval to have those attached to, or to be notified at closing or before closing, or what is that?
Yeah, and I think, and Michael can help me with this, but they'll record a plat, I assume, a condominium map. You could put a note on that condominium map that has something on there that will say, you could put a note, for instance, that said any future short-term rentals will be required to obtain a separate approval, or something like that. And then that would be in the public record and everybody would be on notice.
Okay, so my next question, Mr. Whitley, is, or I don't know who can explain, another private roads, but can you help expand and maybe help clarify for me We know the roads aren't meeting current probably road standards for that many folks, but why that's not a requirement, I'm trying to understand why that's not a criteria for turning it into condominium map, because it seems like that's the conditions that are probably, because they're from way, way back, that needed to be improved for ingress egress anyway, in my opinion, but I'm just curious about that. Can you expand on that a little bit for me, please?
Yes. So the land use code is very descriptive in terms of what is required at what stage and with what type of application. And so the condominium map does not trigger road improvements per the land use code. So the land use code specifies what we can look at and what we cannot. And with condominium maps, it specifically says we look at signs, parking, and landscaping, not road maintenance or road, standards. Now, we even talked about, because in this zoning district, you could have multiple single-family dwellings on one lot. The addition of 11 units to this property, because it would be by right, would also not trigger road improvements, which is kind of a big, you would think that the addition of those units would require road improvements, but per our code, because that would be a use by right, we would not actually have the ability to request road improvements. If the property were divided into multiple lots, not through a condominium process, but through a subdivision process, that would be a trigger for compliance with road standards. So it is laid out in the code what is required at what point, and the condominium map process is definitely not a trigger for compliance with current road standards. Similarly, kind of because it says specifically in the land use code that a short-term rental, access to a short-term rental does have to be from a road that meets current Appendix G standards to the rural area road standards, that would be a trigger. So we can only require what the code allows us to require. And so that provides predictability for both staff and the applicant, though, and any future property owner, with regards to what's required at what point, because it is spelled out in our development standards.
So this process that you've gone through with them, they kind of found probably the unique way to kind of kick that can down the road a little bit, it sounds like. Because sounds like they had, on 310, they had pulled that back about the short-term rental and changed their mind and some of those things. So that's been going through iterations. But they first looked to do short-term rentals for all of them.
The initial request was a request for approval for short-term rental status for each of these units, and that just wasn't possible through the condominium map process.
Okay.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay. And I think I need to sit for a minute so I formulate my next question. So, Madam Chair, I'll see if my colleagues have any other questions.
Commissioner Kefauver, any questions?
Actually, I don't think I have any questions. The one that I did have, I think, was answered by our Assistant County Attorney regarding, the purpose of today, and that is to consider approving the condominium map, which doesn't necessarily trigger compliance with rural area road standards. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I don't think I have any questions.
Yeah, I don't have any questions either. So Commissioners, all for you. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
So my last question, all of the condition number 1, before any of the recordation of the condominium map, all of the technical corrections by the land surveyor would all be fixed, and is also all the code compliance have to be fixed before it's recorded?
No, the code compliance issue is separate from the condominium map process, and so that is an ongoing thing, and it is a requirement, but it is separate from the approval of the condominium map.
Okay, that's helpful. I think that's all I had, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll start deliberation then. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Madam Chair, can I ask for you all to start before I still kind of need about another minute or two, I think, while I listen to your deliberation? Thank you.
Sure. Commissioner Cavallis, you okay to get started?
I'll give it a go. Once again, gratitude. Thank you for the applicants and other folks being here, listening. Appreciate that. I think what I understood from Commissioner Shattuck McNally about an additional condition of approval regarding some kind of specifics around disclosure, so that it can be clear that when the property is for sale, that people are very clear on it's a separate process, to be approved to get for a short-term rental. So I would recommend we consider that additional condition. But that said, I think that I, I I credit the applicants because, for example, in the updated declaration, it does state that there will be no additional development on this property, the 11 additional potential units. I think that's being responsive to neighbor community concerns. I think that's important. I guess I was a bit won over by the reference to it seems like there's an element of altruism here to help find creative ways to provide housing stock for folks that live and work up there in the Estes Valley. So I think that's commendable. It's clear to me that approving a condominium map is what is before us today, and that doesn't necessarily trigger all of these other things. If folks who might buy a cabin wish to go through the process, and it's a process indeed, to become a short-term rental, an approved short-term rental. It's a very separate process, and if we could put some language in the disclosure, that would be helpful. So, and also road standards and other things. I think the declaration is also very proactive in that it looks at creating this association that once 75%, if I understood correctly, 75% of the cabins are sold, then it would bring people together and they would have a shared responsibility in terms of maintenance and looking at road issues and those kinds of things. So I think there's a reference in the declaration to trying to make this a quality development. And so I think all of those are positive things. And as such, therefore, I'm in support of the question at hand. And of course, I need to bring it back to the specific review criteria. And I believe that based on staff and the discussion, that those review criteria have been met. Therefore, I am in support of this application or this condominium map proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, are you ready, or do you want?
Yeah, I can be ready. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your patience, and thank you for allowing me a little more time. So we, Commissioner Cavallo stated it, and I asked those questions. We are here for a specific application, and the other things are kind of not in front of us today, which is the request for a condominium map to approval to convert 22 pre-existing cabins and recreation building into condominiums in order to sell the individual units, units individually. So I do appreciate Commissioner Cavals's start with the, which was on my mind about the disclosure being attached to the map, and so that everyone who is looking at these understand fully the challenges and the criteria and the codes and with the road standards and everything else that would be required moving forward, because I could see outside investment firms looking to grab these up. I'm wondering also, even though it's a separate issue, is it something that we need to at least highlight that the road naming might be a change, and I'm just wondering if that also needs to be a disclosure, just so we don't have folks who down the road kind of get a little stressed when they find out that this is kind of something like, because we have that in the future with other people that weren't happy, they bought something and then it's changed. So I'm just wondering if that's something we should think about. And then I do appreciate the applicant, Danette, yeah, that that you are trying to help with families selling these to working families or staff that come up and work, and nurses, teachers, park staff, people who work in the service industry up in that tourism area. But also, we need, there's a hospital and there's teachers, and there's a really important need for essential folks to run a thriving community. We can't expect folks to drive up canyons an hour each way to come to work in conditions. It is something that's I'm very sensitive to, because it is a community that needs a thriving workforce for sure. I'd be more than happy to connect you with the Estes Park Housing Authority folks to encourage conversations. We can, if you want to contact me offline separately, we can certainly have that conversation. And certainly looking at the criteria, which I kind of read off over and over again, just kind of making sure I understood, because this is something kind of unique that we haven't had a lot of these in front of us. And I do think staff have tried to be diligent with all the details as this progresses, because I think that's what gives me pause, is that it progresses from one thing, and then once it reaches a certain point, kind of triggers the homeowners association, the road association. And I know that's something that's not on us, but I worry about what looks like in the future with any miscommunication. And that's why I think I'm pausing about, communication and making sure people are clear, very clear about what they're buying into, what kind of the processes are. But I do see that we don't have much discretion with these criteria. There was 4 of them, as I understand, and it seems that all the 4 criteria are met. I appreciate that they removed any further development to adding more further density. That is, I think that also helps with some of the concerns from the community with density. And I do have some concerns going forward of what this looks like, and kind of the challenges ahead. And I am worried about ingress and egress out of that area, but those conversations will come. So with that, there's 4 criteria. I have to evaluate this on the 4 criteria met. I do appreciate the conditions, and I will be open and supporting what Commissioner Cafalas introduced, but also wondering if we should add that in future there may be a road name change, just to kind of heads up. So with that, I can, I guess I can support this.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll also be supporting this request today for the condominium map approval. The review criteria are pretty basic in this case, so there's not a lot to deal with here, as far as they meet the zoning, they meet the parking requirements. The map complies with standards required by state statute, and they submitted the documents that address sort of owner's rights and responsibilities. So I think that there again, there is not much criteria, and it seems like they have met it, and staff agrees with that. So I'll be supporting this. Happy to entertain some additional conditions. How would those be included? What would be the best way to sort of include any kind of disclosures to prospective buyers?
Our county attorney staff has come up with a couple of conditions that I believe satisfy the concerns that have been addressed, and let me share my screen here.
Thank you, Michael.
But and we can look at those and see if they look okay, but then what you would want to do is make it a condition of approval that those would appear as a note on the condominium map. Because that's what'll it'll still be in the recorded findings and resolution, but
Okay.
people, when they're buying the property, may or may not see that, but they
Okay.
will see, because the condominium map will be their legal description.
Okay, so these would be, this additional information would be notes on the condominium map. Gotcha.
Yes, so I have modified the suggested motion slide to include conditions 4 and 5. Condition 4 reads, the following note shall be added to the condominium map. None of the residences may be used as a short-term rental until that residence is brought into full compliance with all applicable land use code provisions and all applicable permits are obtained. And 5, any change of use will require compliance with all applicable road improvement standards and addressing standards. And so by putting in all applicable, that provides that kind of leeway with regard to evaluation as to whether or not a change does or does not require those road improvements.
That's right, because not every change in use would require road improvement. As we heard, short-term rentals would be the trigger in that space for that.
That would be one of the triggers, yes.
Right, okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Kafalis, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for drafting the language here. Just one question, perhaps suggestion on number 4, and then I'm curious to hear from the applicants what they think of all this. But I tend to prefer things that are stated positively, and where it says none of the residences may be used as a short-term rental, etc. Is there a way to reframe that something to the effect that any consideration, for short-term rental, has to, I guess I'm wondering if we can change that to a positive statement. I don't know if that dilutes it or if what you all think.
Madam Chair, I think it might dilute it a little bit, Commissioner, just because I feel like when they're reading the map, if they don't see that word none, it might not catch their attention. And I think we want to make sure it's very clear, and I don't want to make it dilute it. I agree. I have concerns about that. I just want to I understand that's how you like to word everything, but I just want to make sure it catches people's attention because I think that is an important thing for the condominium map to be clear. Thank you.
So we do have an alternative proposed, and we'll let you decide which one we would move forward with. But if we were looking to phrase it in the affirmative, it would be if any residence is to be used as a short-term rental, it must comply with all applicable land use code provisions and all applicable permits obtained.
That would be my preference.
And it starts with a big F.
Yes, it starts with the following note must be added to the plat, and then it's if any residence.
Okay. I guess
You're fine with it?
I can live with that.
Okay. All right. So, Commissioner Kafalis, I will let you do the honors of making a motion if you would do
You
that.
guys gonna flash the latest and greatest motion with conditions?
Yes, I'm working on modifying that real quickly, and
Good,
I'll have
Michael,
that for
thank
you in just a second. Okay. Oops.
And then I think maybe the number
Oh,
5
whoops.
conditions at the top.
I was just trying to make it prettier, but using that space renumbers it. So there, the 2 additional conditions. Oh, 5 conditions. So 3 original, 2 additional.
Okay,
All right.
so I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Valhalla Resort Condominium Map File 25-Land 4472, subject to the following, to the 5 conditions of approval that are listed. I don't think I want to go through all of them.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 That motion passes 3-0. Thank you. All right, we have our third and final item on our agenda, and that is the Thellman Trust Addressing Resolution Appeal, and Christine Day, I believe, will be providing information on this item.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Christine Day. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Christine Day, and I am the Larimer County Geospatial Services Team Lead, and I'm also the Larimer County Addressing Coordinator. And we are here today for the board to consider an appeal by the Thellman Trust of the County Addressing Coordinator's decision regarding an addition of a missing segment of Stormy Peaks Drive in the Stratton Park first filing subdivision. So I have a PowerPoint here that starts on page 661 of the attachment packet. And I'm just going to go through my PowerPoint here. So the appeal by the Thellman Trust to the Larimer County Board of Commissioners regarding the Addressing Coordinator's decision, Stormy Peaks Drive, missing road segment correction. The appeal is being filed under Section 7 of the Larimer County Road Naming and Addressing Resolution process. The appellant maintains that Stormy Peak Drive segment is essentially a driveway or non-existent road and contends that mapping the Stormy Peaks Drive missing road segment could confuse emergency response. And they request that the recently added segment of Stormy Peaks Drive be removed from the Larimer County Road Centerline data. The purpose of this presentation is to explain how the missing road segment was discovered, clarify Geospatial Services authority and processes, show that the research that was done to verify, show research and verification steps that were taken for us to determine that the road was missing and needed to be added, and then address the appeal. No pun intended. So how we discovered this, we received a request for an address on vacant land, and this was for Lot 6 Stratton Park first filing. The property owners, as part of the vacant land process, the property owners must provide a sketch showing where their driveway access meets the nearest named road. The submission from the owners of Lot 6 was what you're seeing on your screen here with the Wolf property, which is Lot 6, and where they access the nearest named road, which they pointed to the dashed driveway that you see there on the screen. So this triggered us to do some investigation. We were able to locate Stratton Park first filing recorded plat, book and page, very old, from 1969, book 1415, page 871. The plat showed all named private drives in Stratton Park Estates first filing, including the missing segment of Stormy Peaks Drive. This is an image of the plat that it comes in several pieces, but I stitched it together for this presentation. And in the dedication to summarize what it says, it says, do hereby reserve easements for the installation, maintenance, and operation of utilities as laid out or designated on this plat on roads and streets shown on this plat are provided. However, all roads, not rods, shown on this plat are to be reserved for easements and maintenance of utility, irrigation, and drainage facilities. That was the extent of the research we did. Initially, we didn't find any following documents that would tell us that something had changed since 1969 when the plat was recorded. We did offer the appellant the opportunity to provide any documentation that they might have, and we didn't receive any. One of the other items that we discovered as part of this was we did find a 2024 land survey plat of Lot 6, Stratton Park, first filing. And on this survey, the surveyor did indicate the easements and right-of-ways are shown per the plat of Stratton Park, first filing, recorded at reception number 968819, 1969. So that's that same Stratton Park first filing that we discovered. Geospatial Services Authority. So we are charged with maintaining parcel and road centerline data based on recorded plats, not as built conditions, which is very important because we never know what's going to actually be built. It's based on what is recorded. When corrections or errors are discovered, it's our responsibility to correct that in the data so that we can best represent what is recorded. And that we do that to ensure consistency and alignment with LEDA, Larimer Emergency Telephone Authority, and their public safety data. So the actions that were taken once we went through the previous process of discovering any recorded documents we could find, we verified the recorded plat and confirmed no later changes. We added the missing road segment to the Larimer County road data. We coordinated with LEDA to update their E911 road centerline, ensuring first responders have the information required to respond to 911 calls. And we informed all affected property owners of the changes. So this is an image of the Stormy Peaks Drive after we made the correction. So as you can see, what we added was this segment right here was missing. And so that is based on the recorded plat, and that is what we added. So this segment here. This piece here was there initially, but it was named Lost Wilderness Way. So the summary of the Thellman Trust appeal, and this is kind of repetitive, and I'm sure that Mr. Kohlers will go over this. The missing Stormy Peaks segment should not be added because it does not functionally exist. One portion acts as a private driveway. Potential confusion for emergency response, and they request the reversal of the geospatial services updated. So as the addressing coordinator, when the Thellman Trust appealed, I replied with a decision after going back through everything. And so this is the decision, and this can also be found in your packet starting at page 679. You can see the official letter that was sent. So the nature of the decision, the decision to add a previously unmapped road segment depicted on a recorded subdivision plat is not a discretionary naming decision, but a technical data update grounded in recorded documentation. Obligation to represent recorded documents. Larimer County Geospatial Services is tasked with maintaining GIS data that reflects recorded land-based documents, plats, deeds, easements, etc. The recorded 1972, and I see that that's an error because it's actually 1969, plat for Stratton Park Estates first filing indicates the segment in question. No recorded documents have been submitted that vacate or amend this segment. As such, under both Larimer County's resolution and the LEDA addressing standards, the county is obligated to reflect the data accurately. Because recorded documents are public and permanent by design, they serve as the authoritative basis for the creation of and updates to the Larimer County GIS data. One thing that I wanted to make sure for the appellant, the clarification on functional versus recorded roads. The GIS data serves as a representation of recorded legal boundaries and infrastructure. Whether the road segment currently exists in passable form does not alter its legal presence on the recorded plat. The inclusion of this segment in GIS is not an assertion of its physical condition, but rather its legal documentation status. Additionally, it's important to note that the roads within Stratton Park Estates First Subdivision are private roads maintained and governed by the Stratton Park Road Association and the property owners within the subdivision. For the emergency response considerations, consistency between recorded plats, GIS data, and the LEDA 911 road centerline is vital for emergency dispatch accuracy. Omitting recorded roads from E911 and GIS data can hinder response efforts due to address discrepancies. The inclusion of the Stormy Peaks Drive segment enhances the county's ability to provide clear, consistent location information to public safety personnel. And finally, this seems to be somewhat civil in nature the civil in nature of dispute regarding the use. Any disagreement about whether the road functions as a driveway or shared private road or its current state of passability is a civil matter among subdivision property owners and the road association. Larimer County is not authorized to determine or enforce private easement usage or maintain maintenance responsibilities. Our role is limited to representing legal records accurately within the county system. So recommendations. I'd like to respectfully recommend that the commissioners uphold the current correction, maintain the segment in the county LEDA and LEDA data sets, and this will allow us to continue applying the same processes to all recorded plat corrections in the future.
And just to follow up,
Yeah.
just to follow up on that, because this isn't a kind of an appeal that the board gets very often. And so I wanted to provide the background of why you're seeing this and where it comes from. The county has an addressing resolution that governs how we do this. As part of that resolution in Section 7, it says that decisions of the addressing coordinator can be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. The standard that you are held to, and this is in the addressing resolution, says that the addressing coordinator's decision shall be upheld by the county commissioners unless it is shown by a preponderance of evidence that the decision is inconsistent with or does not promote the intent and purpose of this resolution. So that's the criteria that you're looking at to make your decision. The second part of this is the plat that exists that's recorded shows that it's all private roads. And so the regulation of those roads, who fences those roads, who puts gates on those roads, who maintains those roads, is not a decision that's going to be made today. And it's not something that the county, even if it wanted to, could rule on because they're private roads. So the county doesn't have the authority to tell people who can put a fence where on these roads because these are private roads. And so those sorts of issues are not really before the board today. What's before the board today is there was a section of road that Ms. Day showed that wasn't on our map. When someone came in and asked and said, I need an address for this vacant lot, we discovered that there was a road segment missing. We put that on our map and assigned an address. So the addressing piece is what's present today and the adding of that section of the road to our map. Those are the only issues that are before the board. That's the decision that was made that's being sought to be overturned.
Thank you for that clarification, Frank. Commissioner Kafalis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Frank. That's very helpful. I'm just curious, we recently updated the county addressing resolution in Section 7, which deals with appeals. I would presume that this matter falls under the previous iteration of the resolution, and the appeal process hasn't really changed a lot. Could you speak to that, Christine?
Yeah, that's correct. So everything that we're talking about today falls under our current resolution, not the one that we've been working towards.
Oh, we haven't.
Yes, so they're two totally separate things, and the appeals process is the same in both.
So the one that we've been working towards has not been official. I mean, we're
Correct.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Shannon McNally, any questions? Okay. I don't have any questions at this time, so we'll ask the appellant to come up. The appellant would have 10 minutes to make the case. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Cullers, and I do represent Thellman Trust here, and I'll be presenting the applicant's presentation. I'll try very hard to stay within my 10 minutes. So I'd love for my slides to come up. And I do have the Thellman sitting in the front row behind me. So. And I do think my slides are in the packet, so I forget which page they start on. But
We do have them, and they start on page 735.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so there's my first page, and I'll go on the next slide. First, I'll talk about the primary purpose and some more of the background that Ms. Day didn't maybe address. I'll again talk a little bit about the legal standards and make some arguments for you all. So the primary purpose, as Ms. Day stated, the county has decided to map a section of road on the Stratton Park plat and assign a new address to the Thellman Trust's property. And I do want to clarify that the property owner that came seeking an address for vacant land was Lot 7. And the Thellman's property is Lot 6. Lot 7 is immediately to the east. We want the commissioners to reverse this decision. I'll explain why here. So next slide, please. So this is an enlargement of the plat that we're talking about. The Thellman Trust property is Lot 6, which is on the left, and you can see that it is accessed via a roadway that's labeled Stormy Peaks Drive. It enters on the top, like on the north section, comes down, goes in an easterly direction, then it goes on to Lot 7. Again, I agree. None of the roadways are public. They're all private roads. There's no dedication. Ms. Day said that there was a dedication, but that's incorrect. So there's not going to be any vacating document in the history because there's nothing to vacate. Just wanted to make sure you all understood that. So next slide, please. So again, this is what the county's GIS system looked like before the decision was made. We've got now it's labeled Lost Wilderness Way instead of Stormy Peaks. Lot 6 is in the middle there. Again, the roadway enters the northern area of the property, and then there's like this fork in the road. If you go straight on that fork, that is the Thellman's driveway. The Thellman's house is on the far east side. You can see it on the east side of Lot 6. If you go the other direction, that is also labeled Lost Wilderness Way, and that's a private easement that goes kind of hairpins down, exiting the south end of the Thellman property. So again, there was this, I don't know where Lost Wilderness Way came from, but what was labeled Stormy Peaks Drive was originally labeled Lost Wilderness Way. So next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the lot line between Lot 6 and 7. It's kind of looking northeast. You can see the Thellman's the house is there and kind of in the center. The driveway comes down from the top of the image going down, and then that driveway is part of what was added to the mapping. And then the area that's in like the green dots, that was also added to the county's mapping. And that's like the U-turn that goes on Lot 7 and then turns back towards the west. Next slide, please. So here's what was added to the mapping. That bright red segment right under what's labeled Stormy Peaks Drive, that's the Thellman's driveway that was added. and then there's that bright yellow chunk that goes off onto lot 7 and then exits lot 7 on the southwest section. The Thellman property was once known as 248 Lost Wilderness Way. Now it's known as 646 Stormy Peaks Drive. So I'll go on to the next slide, please. So I agree with the county attorney's articulation of the legal standard. It's our burden to show that Ms. Day was incorrect based on a preponderance of the evidence, that the decision is inconsistent with or does not promote the purpose of this resolution. That is in the Larimer County Road Naming and Site Addressing System resolution, which we clarified, which Mr. Kafalas, Commissioner Kafalas asked about earlier. That's our legal standard. I'm just going to refer to that resolution as the resolution because otherwise it's a mouthful. So again, the legal standard focuses on the purpose of the road naming resolution. And let's look at the purposes. Section 2A, basically that says provide the general public means of identifying, locating property. I don't know if that purpose is really implicated here, but the other two are. Second purpose of the road naming resolution is to assist in the proper delivery of mail, utilities, that kind of thing. The third one is provide for emergency response access. So those are really important. Those are the purposes of the road naming resolution. So we need to look at what Ms. Day did in terms of those purposes. Next slide, please. So I think that this really comes down to what is a road under the resolution that's supposed to be mapped. And thank God the road resolution does provide us a definition. I put it on the screen here. It's a general term denoting a public or private way used for access to two or more lots, or two or more chunks of land. It's not defined in terms of what's recorded. And it's a functional definition that says basically it's a road that you used to get to at least two pieces of property. That contrasts with the definition of driveway, and I'm not going to read it verbatim, but basically a driveway is a vehicle access to just one piece of property. So let's go on to the substantive decision by the road coordinator. So next slide. This is the entrance to the Thellman's driveway. This is about where the new mapping began on the red segment that I showed you on that map earlier. This is a gate that goes across the Thellman's driveway to basically not allow access to anybody other than the Thellmans. It's a locked gate. It's remotely controlled. The Thellmans do not allow access to other lots via this driveway. Again, the plat is pretty ambiguous as to whether that exists to get to other lots, including lot 7. So under the definition of the word road and driveway in the resolution, our view is that this is clearly a driveway. The Thellmans have blocked access to other lots. It's only used to access the Thellman's house. And if other owners in the subdivision have a problem with that, it's on them to go to court and fix that. But right now, that road is only used to access the Thellman's property. Now, the addressing coordinator has taken the position that under the resolution, well, if it's recorded, we got to map it. We disagree. That policy is inconsistent with resolution. I mean, what if there was no road at all? I mean, how does that make sense to map that for emergency response or for delivery? Makes absolutely no sense. So, I'm going to move on to the next slide, please. Under the resolution, driveways, the resolution says 5.A.2.b, existing roads get a road name, but then right below that, driveways do not get road names. And I think that suggests that driveways don't get mapped. It's just a driveway. Mapping the driveway suggests that the driveway is a means to access lot 7 in this case, which is not the case on the ground. The Thellmans don't want this mapped because they don't want access through their property to lot 7. Mapping the driveway therefore does not serve the code purposes as it relates to lot 7 because it's not a way to get to lot 7. Does not provide emergency response, and it doesn't allow deliveries to lot 7, which by the way is vacant. So could I go on to again, here's another look at it. Lot 6 is on the right hand or left hand side. Lot 7 is on the right hand side. Oh, let's go back one. Lot 7 is on the right hand side where the yellow segment goes. To get to Lot 7, there's a road on the far east side of Lot 7. It's a good road. I think that's also known as Stormy Peaks. I can't recall, but that's the way you get to Lot 7. That road on the far eastern side of Lot 7 forms the boundary of Lot 7. So you don't need to go through the Thellman's property to get to Lot 7. It's a driveway. All right, now I'm going to move on to the yellow section. If you go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is what the yellow section looks like where it, the far south end where it connects to Stormy Peaks Drive. And you'd have to, where that yellow arrow shows that you'd have to do a hairpin turn up to a hillside to get onto the road that's been mapped. That's not really a road at all. I mean, if you look on this picture on the right-hand side, that is looking down on the same spot. That's a picture of the road that got mapped. It's super steep. It's difficult. I don't know how you get up there if there was snow or mud. Please move to the next slide. So these are a couple more pictures of what the newly mapped road, the yellow section, looks like. I mean, it's not a road at all. I don't know how you'd use it to, I mean, ordinary passenger vehicles cannot use this to get, they just can't access it. And I don't know how, maybe you'd need an ATV if it was muddy or snowy. Next slide, please. This is just another view of what the yellow section of the road looks like. All right. Next slide, please. So the point here is that the yellow section is unimproved. The purpose maybe is for timber harvesting, but there's no more trees that grow anymore. It's not a road under the definition of resolution because it does not actually provide meaningful access to anywhere. It's basically an ATV trail. If I may make a couple more points.
Yeah.
Dear commissioners, thank you.
More points to finish up, please.
So again, if we're looking at this map, it makes it look like the yellow segment is a shortcut to get to Lot 6, which isn't the case at all. So FedEx is not going to drive up there. I don't think the fire truck's going to drive up there to get to Lot 6. It does not serve the purposes of the resolution. It's misleading. It's not going to work. It's only going to cause confusion. So again, my last slide here. The red section is a driveway because the Thellmans only allow access to their own property. The yellow section is not a road at all. And again, I'm going to go back to the idea that, that according to Ms. Day, the road coordinator's view seems to be, well, if it's in the real property records, we've got to map it. We're just going to not look at, don't show me what it actually looks like on the ground. If it's in the real property records, we've got to map it. So I'll make it, in my mind, that makes no sense at all. If I owned a property that had dense woods and a ravine and a river going through it, and I wanted to grant an easement to my two neighbors, like on the side, I could grant an easement that traces out a line that goes over the river and through the woods. Goes over the river and through the woods.
We're way over 10 minutes.
And so the county's going to map that, even though that doesn't even exist.
Great. Thank you.
That makes no sense.
All right. Your time is up, so we've gone over, so appreciate
Thank
and
you.
we'll call you back up if we have some questions here.
Thank you very much.
Sure. All right. So we will, any questions at this point? Are you ready to move into public comment? All right, we'll move into public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wanted to give public comment today? Please raise your hand. Okay, we'll get you started. Did we have folks signed up?
We do have a sign-up list.
Okay. All right, so, first is Julie, is that right? Is that what I'm seeing?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so are you Julie? Okay, welcome, Julie.
Just confirming, Madam Chair, you want a 3-minute time limit for public comment?
Yeah, 3 minutes. Yep. All right, thank you. Welcome. And just introduce yourself, please.
My name is Julia Lynham, and this is my husband, Ron Lynham. We own Lot 1, which is directly south of the
Thellman property.
Okay. So I just want to make the point that this issue is more nuanced because of If you needed an emergency vehicle to come to your house, the first segment of Stormy Peaks that you're going to come to is the road that comes up to our house and also turns up to lot 7. So if I wanted somebody to get to me fast, of course they would probably turn onto our road and then come up. Our gate then happens after that segment that turns off onto lot 7. So that would mean an emergency vehicle could probably get to us pretty quickly. But since it looks like Stormy Peaks connects through lot 7 to lot 6, obviously that's not going to happen. So if somebody needed to get to the Thellman property, they are probably still going to turn on our section of Stormy Peaks Drive because it's the first thing that happens, the first thing that they're going to come to. So they're not going to know to go all the way around. So if an emergency vehicle came up our road and then entered our property, there's no place to turn around until they get up to our house, which was not pictured. This happened when the county people came to put some road signs on, and they were very confused. And so they came to my property, and I said, come out, and I showed them where the segment was, and they said, are we supposed to go through that? And I said, no, not really, because it's not passable. So I told them, you have to go to the bottom of our driveway. And the bottom of our driveway, it's very, very difficult to take a left back onto Mount Ethel Road. It's hard to do that in a big truck. And you'd have to go all the way around to the other segment of Stormy Peaks Drive. So I think where the issue is for me is that renaming the segment of Stormy Peaks Drive that goes through the Thellman property creates a lot of confusion. It creates confusion for us. In addition, their address is 646 Stormy Peaks, and ours is 454. And to get there, to get around to their place is probably, I don't know, on a good day, probably a 15-minute drive. So it sounds like they're close together. And it looks like from the aerial map that can be connected, but you can't. You can't get from our house to the Thellman house quickly.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
And so the next person on the list is Jeff Wolf. Hello. Go ahead.
One thing that happened here this isn't a renaming. This is a restored name from the documented, platted, recorded road back in 1969. So there's been a misclarification. It's not a renaming. It's not a new naming. It's the same road that the bless the county's heart they found was changed to Lost Wilderness Way. Nobody seems to know exactly when this was changed to Lost Wilderness Way. But then we'll discuss the driveway. Stratton Park is a subdivision where all the people that belong to the subdivision are entitled to use the roads or the easements. This is an easement off of Mount Ethel Road through Lot 5, then through the Thellman property, Lot 6, not their private driveway. This is an easement of the Stratton Park Road and then through Lot 7. Now, as far as emergency services, we had a grandson, my oldest son. We built a house, what used to be Lot 6. That was his property. He was severely injured. So they called 911. At this time, it was Stormy Peaks Drive. There was no confusion. 911 ambulance was there within minutes, radioed Flight to Life. They went down to our hay meadow, and in 20 minutes, he was in Children's Hospital in Denver. So, and as far as these roads are all documented, deeded, and recorded with the county, and the original road, as I repeat, was Stormy Peaks Road. And just because it's somewhere there was an error, that there's a segment that goes off to Risk Canyon Ranch that was an easement that my son sold off of lot 6 to get to lot 1A. Now that was the segment that was supposed to be Lost Wilderness Way, not the whole road going from Mount Ethel all the way through where Stormy Peaks Drive goes. It was just that one segment that goes to 1A that came off of Stormy Peaks Drive. The county admitted their error and said that it was just misnamed. And so it was just a restoration of the name. Now, we've been using this road since 1987. Well, 1982, excuse me. And all these roads in Stratton Park, I timbered, I raised cattle up there. We've used that road frequently. Well, I was informed that my fence lines were off, so I spent the entire winter, this past winter, I asked the Thellman trust people if it was surveyed, so I took them at their word and rebuilt my fences to this survey. Now, that time I was up there, probably used that road 23, 24 times a month. But I've always used that. We've always used that road since 1982. So it's a prescriptive easement. It's a, if you want to call it an easement, that's the most easiest way to get there.
And Mr. Wolf, your time is up, so I'll have you just wrap it up.
An pertinent easement. So I think I've gotten the most important points across.
Thank you.
But it is not a private driveway. It's a private road. All Stratton Park roads are private roads.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Donna Wolf. Donna was saying no. Okay. So Mr. Wolf had gotten the point across. So, okay. We can't have any more speaking out from the audience. Oh, sure. And anybody else is welcome to speak. We'll have Bridget next, and that if Bridget Geinstein. Okay, Bridget, if you want to speak, and then anybody else is welcome to, speak that's in the audience that wants to speak.
Sorry, I wasn't real prepared.
No, that's okay.
I was raised up there, lived up there all my life, and it's been Stormy Peaks Drive since I was a little girl. And so what my father has told you is true, and it's an easement. My husband and I just moved back up in the area last year, and the property we bought did not have electricity on it, and we wanted electricity. And the power poles go through my folks' property, but the last one is up on the Thellman and Keys residence. And we went up and we asked them if we could tie into that pole so we could get power down to our property, which I'm sorry, there's not a map up there to show you where we're at. And I don't know my lots, I'm sorry. But long story short, they denied us right away. And I did some research, and there's a booklet and everything's, on file with the county. Legally, my husband and I could have tied into that power pole because there's an easement on these private roads in Stratton Park. But we dropped it, spent an additional $30,000, went out of our way to go way, 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 way down the road and get power elsewhere. And the reason I'm even bringing it up is I was trying to be kind and neighborly. And my father was discussing, the survey that they had done, and he took him at his word. He did. And he moved his fence. It took him all winter, hurt himself in the process, got that done, and he got all of his fence. It's hard work. Got all of his fence rebuilt and gates put in. And then the one time that he was up there, the next time he was up there, the Thellmans or Keys, whoever it was, had put a huge mound of dirt in front of their gate, so they couldn't even go through it. Another thing I was going to bring up that might seem irrelevant, but just, again, historically, we've used this access. My husband and I used to go up there and get firewood off my mom and dad's property. Yeah, it's vacant. What? Because there's not a house on it. We've used that property for cutting Christmas trees, clear cutting. My father's an amazing maintainer of the forest land. And I've dug out and transplanted trees at my other property, so now all of a sudden, because this locked gate and this private road and them not being neighborly or kind to us, we aren't not allowed to access my mom and dad's property because they have a locked gate up now. It didn't used to be that way. Okay. That's my word. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wanted to speak that's in the audience? I didn't have anybody else signed up, but giving you the opportunity. Oh, yeah. Yep. Please come forward and we'll just have you introduce yourself and you'd have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm Grant Wolf, Jeff and Donna Wolf's son. I just, I could go on off of what he said. One thing, having access to the top of that property, through that easement, I believe if you would take that away from it, it devalues that property. And, he bought that property in, I believe, I'm going to go out on a limb, say mid-90s, early to mid-90s, with that easement up there. And for that to be taken away by a mistake that was made, down the road at some point, and for him, to have to lose value of that property because, no access to the top of it, reasonable access, I think would not be a correct way of doing things. I think, the mistake that was made, I think it needs to be overturned, like Ms. Day had said about, put back to how it was originally plotted. And, if there's issues from there, they can be taken. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else who wanted to speak on this item? Ryan, is there anyone online who wanted to speak?
If there's any members of the public online who would like to speak on this item, please use the raise your hand function now. We have no hands raised.
Okay, last opportunity in person. All right, we'll close public comment. And then the appellants have 5 minutes to rebut. So you can come up and respond to anything that you've heard.
Thank you, Commissioners. I would like to make a few rebuttal points. I think what we heard from the Wolves shows why we're really here today. The Wolves are the ones that asked for their vacant property to be addressed. And they have it in their mind that mapping the driveway for the Thellmans and then the yellow segment that I put is somehow going to improve their legal rights to drive through the Thellmans property. And I think the county attorney made the point, which I 100% agree with, that the county's decision to map or not map something has no effect whatsoever on the underlying legal rights of the parties. So I think that I want to make that point just so that we understand where the Wolves are coming from. They do have access to their property on the east side, which I showed on my map. And I also want to note that this for better or for worse, I'm going to say for worse, the Stratton Park plat is badly done. It doesn't have any dedications, and it does not clearly, I'd say it doesn't attempt to grant to all the parties, all the lot owners, like mutual access easements over all the roads that are laid out. It doesn't do that. So the legal access through the roadways in Stratton Park between the owners of Stratton Park is extremely uncertain. And if the Wolves want to prove up those rights, like if they want to prove their supposed prescriptive easement across the Thellman's property, then the forum to do that is the court, and it's not here. So right now, the Wolves do not have access to Lot 7 for their convenience. Let's be real; it's for their convenience to what they call the upper part of Lot 7, which is the uphill part of Lot 7. They don't have that right now. They said something about a prescriptive easement, but if they really want that, again, the pathway is the district court. And I do want to make one more comment about the standard of review and the idea that there's no discretion here. If there really was no discretion for the addressing coordinator to map things, then why do we have a evidentiary based review standard? Like if all it was is, well, it's in the maps, we have to, if it's in the records, we have to map it. If that's all there was, then it wouldn't be a judgment call. But I think that the standard of review in the resolution shows that it is a judgment call because the word road is defined in a functional sense and not just does it appear on paper. I think that's all I got.
Thank you. All right, bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, any questions that you have of staff or the appellant? Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Frank, could you remind us, I think you did so well when you mentioned that earlier. Can you remind us why we're here today? I know we have this executive summary. I'm assuming this is from staff. This is executive summary. So I just want to kind of, what you had said earlier really resonated with. Could you remind me what you said earlier? Thank you.
So this is an appeal to the addressing standards of the county's resolution. The decision that was made by the addressing coordinator was to map that section that we've been talking about. And that what the effect of that will be is that Lot 7, which is the Wolf property, will get an address on Stormy Peaks Drive. And the address for the Thellmans, which was something else. It was Lost Wilderness Way, will become an address on Stormy Peaks Drive. So it will change the Thellman's address and it will give an address to Lot 7. And it will map that section on that Thellman's property. That was the decision that was made. That's the decision that's being appealed. You have to find by a preponderance of the evidence that the decision to grant the appeal, you have to find that the decision that was made by the addressing coordinator was inconsistent and didn't promote the intent and purpose of the code. Whether it's gated, who has access to it, again, these are private roads. Whether it's mapped or addressed a certain way isn't going to resolve that problem, and the county doesn't enforce people gating off or doing things on private roads. That's going to have to be done in some separate proceeding. So the question before this board is just, should that section stay on the map, and should those two addresses for Lot 6 and Lot 7 have been assigned as they were by the addressing coordinator?
My follow-up, Madam Chair, clarifying. Okay, Frank, or maybe even anybody who wants to answer this. When subdivisions, this is subdivision, right? It's a develop. And when those are mapped or platted, there may not be roads put in it. They're just kind of put in the plat as where they are going to be. So that was from 1969, you said? And that was where that data came from when it was platted. And that hasn't been changed. Can you go back and clarify that again? I was reading back through your notes here.
Correct, yes. So the plat was recorded in 1969 with the roads named on the plat. Then there was a segment that was missing. So when we saw this, we put it back in so that it reflects what's on the recorded plat. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I can just add in, there was no zoning code in effect in 1969.
There was no what?
There was no zoning code to require road improvements in effect in 1969.
Thank you. Do you have something else?
So expand on that, Jenny, because the road, 1969, the roads had platted names and to those roads.
So normally when we go through a subdivision process these days is when we look to lay out those roadway requirements and improvements. That process wasn't in place at that time.
And maybe just to clarify, the subdivision process, as we think of it today, didn't come into being until 1972. In 1972 is when Colorado passed subdivision regulations for things under 35 acres. So when this was recorded, it didn't go through the standard subdivision process that it would have gone through post 1972. The other question you had was, when people map a road in a subdivision, does that mean there's actually a road there? No, there's lots of mapped subdivisions where there's not roads actually there.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Commissioner Cafalas, questions? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just wondering, Christine and team, Some of the comments that were brought up, I wonder how you might respond to them. For example, the attorney for the applicants brought up about in the resolution it defines a driveway as being different than a street road, and the resolution suggests that we have a requirement to properly name streets and roads and not necessarily driveways. Can you respond to that, ma'am?
Yes, per the resolution, an access is considered a driveway if there's only one property using that driveway for access. So then it's a driveway, no name, no nothing. As soon as there is a second property using that same driveway access, it then becomes a named private road. And so that's when it would be named.
And so in this, the road in question, there's a locked gate that has been put there. And I'm not, whatever the motivation for all of that, but that has blocked access. I'm still trying to understand. The gate now prevents access unless you go around and you go up the hillside. Can you talk about that a little bit, please?
I can from the standpoint of what I know, according to the plat, and I'm speaking right now as the Geospatial Services team lead, because according to the plat, my role as Geospatial Services is to put that data in as it is recorded. That's separate from my role as the addressing coordinator, which is what we're talking about today.
Thank you. A few more questions, please. One of the folks who commented publicly, I think the Lymans perhaps, talked about renaming the road Stormy Peaks Drive from Lost Wilderness would create confusion. But our understanding in reading the material, it's supposed to help address confusion, especially with emergency responders and 911, LEDA, et cetera. Would you speak to that one?
So per the resolution, the addressing coordinator has the authority to rename any road in unincorporated Larimer County. Of course, it has to fall under certain guidelines as outlined. But the addressing coordinator has the authority to rename any road in unincorporated Larimer County, short of a county road, a state highway, a U.S. highway. So I made the decision to forego the renaming, which was Lost Wilderness Way, and just stick because I could see that this was getting to a certain point. So I made the decision to just go with exactly what was on the plat, not deviate from what was on the recorded plat. And that's why we stuck with Stormy Peaks Drive for that segment that was missing.
And that is one of the bases for your decision, and that is that you are obligated to represent recorded documents. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Just one or two more.
There is, through this process, we learned that there's some things that we can do with LEDA 911. And what we have done is there is a flag on this section of road, which LEDA does all throughout the county whenever there's a road that it may not be passable. And so if 911 is called to this area, the responders will see a flag on that section of road that says this is not passable without a four-wheel drive. So they will know not to use that segment, and that's a standard process that LEDA uses throughout the county.
And related to that, Christine, thank you. That's very helpful also. I suspect that you have had, have you had conversations with first responders about your obligations, your responsibilities to correct the name, and what have they said?
When we first discovered that this was missing and needed to put it in, I reached out to Larimer County Dispatch and Larimer County Emergency Services, Justin Weitzel, and let them know, explain the situation to them and said, this is going in, here's where it's at, this is how LEDA's gonna flag it, so that, to make sure that they were aware.
And they said this would be helpful to them?
Yes. They said anytime they know of any roads that are in the road system but not passable, that is an extreme help to them to be able to get to where they need to go in the shortest amount of time possible.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I believe that's all I have. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Did you have anything further? So, Christine, you've answered a question around the, I'm glad to know that there's a flag on that section because that seems like it's going to help with the LEDA process. What about the proper delivery of, the section that talks about proper delivery of mail, packages, and other utilities? Are there any concerns around that?
We don't have any mechanism for promoting, for putting the same type of flag on a road like we do with LEDA because of our partnership with them. So there is no way really for us to reach out to delivery services and say, hey, don't use this section of road.
Thank you. I don't know that I have any other questions right now. Did any other questions come up for either of you? Okay. Are we ready to move into deliberation then? Commissioner Shattuck McNally, will you get us started?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Thank you all for coming here today. I've seen where you all live. It's quite a drive down. We appreciate you being here in person. Certainly, this is complicated, especially with an older subdivision and changes. And it's never easy, as we have found, renaming roads, but they're usually for good reason and for safety, and we certainly have to follow the resolution and the process that we have in place. So, appreciate the information and the pictures, and looking at all of the information, and it is really on the applicant or the appellant to show a preponderance of evidence. However, I see that most of the evidence supports the your title, the geospatial. Which one are we?
For this case, it's the Larimer County address.
And Larimer County addressing staff member who made this determination, and I'm going off of the evidence and from the original planning and the conversations of how she has gone through this. So, Madam Chair, I don't see any preponderance of evidence to overturn her decision. So I will stand to support her decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cavales.
Thank you all who live up in that neck of the woods. I hope that somehow, well, first of all, let me state that I will also be upholding the Larimer County Addressing Coordinator's decision because I believe it is based on what is required in terms of discovering that a recorded plat had this address. There were other aspects, the basis for the for denying the appeal. So I will uphold the decision. It sounds like this has been an issue for quite some time, and I guess I'm hoping that somehow this might help with figuring out how folks can get along. I don't know if that's possible, but I do believe we've done our due diligence. There are certain requirements in the resolution. I think our addressing coordinator has followed that, and therefore I support the decision.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll also be supporting the decision of the addressing coordinator. I think this is a real tricky situation here. And I think going back to the original, filing was really the best sort of way to deal with this in a situation that where things aren't necessarily as clear cut as they might be. I know that some of the appeal talked about the portion acting as a private driveway. There seems to be some dispute whether it is or not. So for me, that didn't necessarily hold much weight. It looks like we've had the questions answered around emergency response, that that folks, do know that section is impassable, and so, our emergency responders wouldn't use that section anyway. And so, it seems also like even if it doesn't functionally exist, a road can be named. And so, I think going back to the original name that was listed in 1969 seems like the best solution here. And I appreciate that sort of data-driven approach, and that you went back and you found those old documents and did a thorough look through on those documents to make sure that we were getting this right. And so, some of the other issues that came up today really aren't in our purview today. There again, along with Commissioner Kafalis, I always hope that neighbors can figure out a way to get along and take care of one another, because, there's a lot of things going on in our world, and we sure do need each other, in my experience. So, but as far as the naming of the road, it makes sense to me to stay with the Stormy Peaks Drive, which does seem to be the original intent from the documents from the late 60s. So with that, I guess we need a motion here. And is there a motion that's been, okay, wonderful. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, will you make this motion, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. I move the Board of County Commissioners to deny the appeal to the Larimer County Addressing Coordinator's decision regarding the Thellman Trust addressing resolution.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 3-0. That is all our business to come before us this afternoon. We will be back at 6:30 with some other items. And thank you all for being here.